Okay, so before we get started, I'd like to give a small introduction about you to all the viewers. So, hi everyone. This is Mr. Steve Woodhall is from South Africa, and he's a 62-year-old young man. He has been into butterflies since early childhood, and he used to collect UK and European species as a boy and a teenager. And also in 1980, he moved to South Africa. He started collecting in a small way that met some local serious collectors who founded the Lepidopterists Society of Southern Africa. He joined in 1986 and was treasurer for a while and president for like 8 years. And he's an author, editor, and co-author of several books, from the Practical Guide to the Butterflies and Moths in 1992 to the Field Guide to Butterflies of South Africa, first edition in 2005. More recently, Gardening for Butterflies with Lindsay Gray in 2015, and the Butterflies of South Africa app in 2017. And of course, the recent one which got published last year, that is the second edition of Field Guide to the Butterflies of South Africa. Sorry, not last year, this year. Yeah, yes, sir, you can carry on. You can start your session.
Thanks, Sharan. Good morning or good evening or good afternoon, everybody, wherever you are. Without any further ado, I'd like to get into the slideshow. This is a presentation on the butterflies of South Africa. In it, we're going to cover all of these topics here. Just a quick overview of South Africa and its habitats. Some examples of our iconic species, which are typical to Africa. There's a couple of species in there that might be familiar to our Indian viewers, but let's see. A little bit about conservation and collecting, and then some of the collaborative projects we have here, citizen science, and also some of the work we've been doing with rare and endangered species. Okay, here's South Africa, a map of South Africa, and each one of those colors is a different biome. And a biome is essentially it's a habitat, it's a group of vegetation types of velocity. Within each one, a lot in common. There are 9 of them. Very diverse.
Sir, one sec. Sorry to interrupt. Can you be a bit more louder?
No, then how do I adjust the?
Maybe you can come closer to your laptop, or if you have.
I'll come closer to my screen. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Now it's perfect. You can carry on.
I'll make sure I'm close to the screen. Okay.
Sure.
All right. So and then something about rare and endangered species. Just to come back to the biomes, you can see that in the middle of the country we've got this massive pink area called the Nama Karoo, which is a semi-desert, very scrubby, sparse, arid habitat. Around it, you've got the succulent Karoo, which is slightly different in that it contains more succulent species, and that tends to be found along the coast and at higher altitudes. And then along the Cape Coast down in the southwest there, you've got the fynbos, which is where a lot of the special endemic species of butterfly and plants. The Cape Floral Kingdom, of course, is one of the world's floral kingdoms. It's the smallest of the floral kingdoms. The grassland area in the east, very large, but very heavily converted into farmland and mining. There's very little natural grassland left in South Africa. And then the Karoo, the savanna, which is very similar to savanna in the rest of Africa. There are places in Limpopo province and northern KwaZulu-Natal, which look very like Kenya. And along the coast, we've got what we call the Indian Ocean Coastal Belt, which is a mosaic of forest and grassland. The forests themselves are tiny. Can you see my cursor? The only bit of forest you can see on this map are up here, which is the forests along the mountains in Limpopo, and down here, the coastal forests around Knysna in the Cape. And they're relict Afromontane forests. The only lowland forests we've got here in South Africa are little remnants along the Eastern Ocean coastal belt. Just to show you the sort of land area that we have for each of these, savanna is the biggest, at nearly 34%. Next is grassland, but as I said, that's sort of 90% transformed. Nama Karoo, 21%, and the fynbos and the succulent Karoo. Between the 3 of them, they form the Cape floristic region, and it's around about 30% of the country area. Albany thicket, which is a kind of transitional vegetation type between Karoo and the East Indian coastal belt. The coastal belt itself is only 1%, and desert, which is in the far northwest of the country along the Orange River, very little of it. That's the southern edge of the Great Namib Desert in Namibia. And then as you can see, the forests are tiny, less than 0.5% of the area, and highly threatened. And it's where we get a lot of our specialist species. So moving on, here's some pictures of our habitats, of our biomes and subhabitats. The top left here, we've got a typical desert, and growing in the foreground is a merua, which is the host plant of a very specialized period that's only found in those gullies along the rivers in Namibia. The Nama Karoo, you can see there's a man with a butterfly net. Oh, hang on, disappeared. There's a man with the butterfly net. That's a place called Sutherland in the center of the Karoo, and there are several endemic and very rare butterflies there. Then some succulent Karoo. You can see there that there's a lot of flowers. It's during spring. The succulent Karoo is very similar to the Sonora Desert and the Atacama Desert in that after rains, masses of flowering plants break out and it becomes a painted desert. There's an example of feignboss in the Cape Mountains, the place called Swartberg Pass. Again, another very good butterfly spot. High altitude grassland, there's a detail there of a friend of mine who's got a farm down in the southeast of the country. You can see the beautiful fresh spring grass after the rain, it gets burnt in winter time when it dries out, and then in the springtime when it rains, the grass comes up and you can see there's a multitude of flowers and you get a lot of butterflies there. Then to the right of that, there's Afrotemperate climax forest. That is at a place called Makubuskloof, which is up in the northeast of South Africa. And the butterflies you're getting there are very similar species to what you find in Afrotemperate forests right up into Central Africa. Then there's a picture of some Indian Ocean coastal grassland, the forest mosaic at the bottom there. You can see you've got a combination of beautiful green grassland and thick dark forest. An example of savanna, Combretum terminalia Burkea woodland, which is specific to the central parts of northern South Africa with some beautiful trees. That's one of my favorite trees in the middle there, Burkea africana, and the wild syringa, which is the host plant of the butterfly Aphnis hutchinsoni, which I'll show you later on. There's an example of some riverine gallery forest, which you find in the eastern part of the country. That's a place called the Manzimtoti, not far from where I live. And again, without me telling you where it is, you could be in Nigeria, you could be in the Ivory Coast, you could be in the Congo there, you wouldn't know. Some more pictures. Top left, we've got some Afromontane grassland with Nolangeni Mountain in the distance, which is where I took that close-up picture earlier. Then there's a classic bushveld savanna in the top middle, miles and miles of Africa going into the distance. We have a special kind of savanna called Bankenveld here, which is found in rocky, arid places. Some more of my favorite trees there. Albany thicket in the middle left. Typically, there's a lot of succulent vegetation in there. You can see that bright green plant there is a plant called speckworm, whose Latin name escapes you right now, but it's one of the host plants of the common diadem. I think in India they refer to that butterfly as the monarch diadem, or the Danaid egg fly. That's the one that uses it. Then we got some real desert. That's actually not in South Africa. That's in Namibia. Which is southern Africa, of course. It gives you an idea of. It looks like the surface of Mars. Subtropical grassland up in the northeast of the country. That's a place called Lech Alamitsi, which is one of the most species-rich nature reserves in Africa, let alone South Africa. Some more Afromontane forest grassland mosaic down there. Succulent Karoo in the middle. You can see a riverbed there, dry riverbed full of flowering daisies. And then there's some detail of low altitude grassland. And those flowers you can see in the middle there are called Tetrasolega natalensis, the blue mist flower, and that is one of our best butterfly attractants in our area. So let's move on to the butterflies you find in these places. Well, there are 672 species in South Africa. If you count the subspecies, it's 806. There's 231 Nymphalidae in 9 subfamilies. There's 397 Lycaenidae in 6 subfamilies. So that's the most speciose family in South Africa. 45 Pieridae in 2 subfamilies. There's 11 Papilionidae, 109 Hesperids in 5 subfamilies. There's way too many to show here. If we had all year, I couldn't show you all of them. So I'm going to go through roughly one slide per subfamily. I've missed a few out and I've combined a couple. So to start off, here we have an Inphalidae, and here's a Danaini. And we know that Danaini are extremely widespread in Asia as well as in Africa and South America. The ones we get here are mostly in the genus Amaris. We've got one Danaus. So the big one, the big picture is Danaus. Amoris neavius dominicanus, the southern friar. There's an underside there and an upper side on the right, and that's the biggest one we find locally. And that is the distasteful model for a lot of our mimicking butterflies. The chief, in fact, these are all models for various mimics. The chief at the top there, Amoris echeria, feeding on a plant called Ageratum houstonianum, which is an invasive weed. Unfortunately, butterflies like invasive weeds. They've got a lot of nectar. At the bottom right, we've got the layman, Amoris albimaculata, which is very easy to confuse with the chief, but you can tell the difference in the forewing spotting. The novice, which is a smaller version of the southern friar. I mean, you can see at the bottom left there, you've got a novice, and there's a good old African plain tiger, Danaus chrysopus orientis, and they're both sucking alkaloids from where somebody trimmed the grass verges. And there's some heliotropium plants there which are giving out pyrazidylene alkaloids, which the butterflies, of course, the males are able to imbibe these and use them to metabolize their distasteful chemicals and also their mate-attracting pheromones. So that's for Danaini. Now we move on to the Saturinae, and we've got some very special butterflies in this group. Of course, there's a lot of nice Saturines around the world. The one in the big picture is our Table Mountain Beauty, Aeropates tulbachia, which is a specialist butterfly of the mountain shade in the east. It's almost endemic to South Africa. It's also found in eastern Zimbabwe. The caterpillars use grass, like many of these species do. It's a large butterfly, between 75 and 100 millimeters across. Rather, in its habits, it resembles more a Caraxes than a Saturine. It's a beautiful butterfly. It's also the pollinator of one of our national flowers, the red Deza orchid. That one's a particular specimen is feeding on a Kniphopia, red hot poker. At the top left, we got the bush beauty, Paralethe dendrophyllus indosa, which is actually photographed in my garden. It's a purely forest species. Below it is a Ponderland autumn widow. Now, we have a lot of butterflies called widows in South Africa. This is just one of about 30 species that we have. And they're all extremely specialized grassland butterflies. There are a couple that live in forest grassland ecotones. With the Dairini, which is the tribe to which these top 3 butterflies belong, are an ancient lineage of Saturinae. They probably their ancestry probably goes back to Gondwana land, because their closest relatives are found in southern South America. The genus Lethe is very closely related to Paralethe, hence Paralethe, which means looks like a lethe. Some more South African specials at the bottom. We have these ones called shade flies, beautifully orange marked undersides, very, very specialized butterflies. This particular one lives on forest edges. We've only got 3 species of them. The dark red ringlet, which I know Dr. Lee will remember that one. That's a butterfly of the moister savanna and the forest grassland ecotone of the east. And on the upper side is quite dull, sort of dark brown with dark red bands, but the underside is spectacular. And then at the bottom right, we have the white netted brown, one of the subspecies of Pseudonympha trimenii. The Pseudonympha are a very large genus of butterflies you find in southern Africa, mostly endemic to South Africa. There are a couple of species found in Zimbabwe, and they are not related to the Eurybias, the butterflies you find in northern India, but they fulfill the same niches. They fly at high altitude. The larvae take a whole year to go through to adulthood, and they tend to be restricted to very narrow habitats. That particular one is found in little enclaves of grassland inside the Karoo. Then we have the Heliconiinae, which I know in India you get butterflies like the Costa, the Tawny Costa, which I think is that probably is a butterfly that got mixed up with one of our species by the taxonomists. We used to call it Acrea, I think it was Serena. Anyway, I digress. The one at the top,
Yes,
the
yes,
big
sir.
butter.
We do have two coasters. One is tawny, and the other one is yellow coaster.
Okay, what's the Latin name of the Tawny Costa?
Uh, I'll get back to you. It's not coming to my mind.
Okay. I know the taxonomy mixed it up with one of our species.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, the large picture is a blood red acrea. Photographs don't really do this butterfly much justice. It is Ferrari red. It looks it's the same color of red as the blood red glider you find in Central Africa, and we get lots of them here. They breed in my garden. They feed on a plant called the African dog rose, and that one is having a nice time feeding on the nectar of Tetrasolego. Also on Tetrasolego at the top, one of the Telkinio genus, because we've got two genera of Heliconia. In fact, no, we've got more. We've also got the African leopard butterfly, the Philanta philanta, which I haven't shown here, which is also one of the Heliconiinae. The Waterberg Acrea barbari, bright magenta pink butterfly. It's found in the Waterberg in central Limpopo. The black-based Acrea natalica. Again, it's a butterfly we found in our area. It's quite common in my garden. The larvae feed on Passifloraceae, as does the Waterberg Acrea. The one at the bottom there, black-tipped Acrea, Calderina, also a passion flower feeder. And then on the bottom left there, we have the East Coast Acrea, which is our biggest Acrea species. The adults are typically, in the males, they get to about 65, 70 millimeters across, and the females can be as much as 90 millimeters across. That's a female. It's extremely sexually dimorphic. The females are black, white, and clear, and the males have fire engine red wherever the female has white. And it's quite rare in South Africa. You only find it in the Lobombo Mountains in the far northeast, but further north in Kenya, it can be quite common along the coast. Then we have what we call the big flashies, the aristocrats of the butterfly world, the genus, or the Caraxinae. And I know you've got plenty of these in India. I think you call them Nawabs and Rajas there as well. We flirted with calling them emperors, but we realized that was going to get them mixed up with the purple emperors that you get in the Northern Hemisphere. So we now call them Caraxes. The one at the top is Caraxes wakefieldi, which until recently was in the genus Euxanthe until it was moved into Caraxes by Nicholas Wahlberg when he revised the genus. And this is another sexually dimorphic butterfly. You probably see that the coloring is very similar to your blue tiger butterfly, the Turrimalas. We do get a Turrimala in Africa, Pedivorana. It's very rare in South Africa. It's a vagrant. There's only about 4 records. The male forest queen mimics Turrimala Pedivorana. The female, which I've not shown here, mimics the southern friar. It's a big black and white butterfly. Top right is a silver-barred Caraxes, Drusianus, which again is quite a specialist butterfly. It's found in wet and coastal forests all over Africa, from down here in South Africa right across into Nigeria and Senegal. It always feeds on the same type of plant, the Syzygium, which I know you get Syzygiums in India as well. Syzygium caudatum, which grows in my garden, and that male you can see there was actually bred from eggs I got in my garden, but it's found all along the coast. One of the most beautiful ones, of course, is the blue-spotted Caraxes, Caraxes Cytheron, which is a male you can see there. Every imaginable shade of blue on the same butterfly. A lot of our Caraxes are black in the male, as you can see at the bottom there, the Satyr Caraxes, Italian. The female has got beautiful white bands with orange patches and blue as well. The male's quite a handsome little butterfly. When the sun catches at the right angle, the black lights are sort of dull iridescent green. In the middle at the bottom, the white-barred Caraxes, Caraxes brutus natalensis. That's probably our commonest local Caraxes. It's found all over southern Africa. In fact, all over Africa almost now. It is not found in the Sahara or north of the Sahara, but it's found all the way down into the Western Cape, where it only moved recently because people started planting its host plant, which is mahogany down there. It's also moved onto Syringa, Melia isadarak, which is a Middle Eastern plant, which is an invader here, and the butterflies followed it everywhere. And so it's found, Caraxes brutus is found in one subspecies or another, virtually all over sub-Saharan Africa. And then down at the bottom left, one of a lot of people's favorite is the pearl Caraxes, Caraxes veranis. That white patch at the bottom of the wing is actually pearlescent white, and it flashes in the sun. And for me, one of the best sights you can see in an African forest, there are a couple of veranis, pearl Caraxes dogfighting against the dark green of the forest backdrop. The orange really stands out. It's a beautiful creature. Then we move on to the Nematidinae. And again, we know you've got a lot of these, of this subfamily in Asia. I think some of the sergeants and there's one called the constable as well. Quite large, showy, beautiful butterflies. It's the same here as well. They go all the way from gold-banded forester, which is the only member of the family of the genus Euphedra that one finds in South Africa in the northeast. It's quite a large Euphedra. The wingspan in the male is about 60 to 70 millimeters. The female is about 80 to 90 millimeters. That's the female. They're very fond of sitting wings open on the forest floor. And further north in Africa, there are dozens of species of Euphedra in all possible different shapes and forms. The top right is Boisdevall's false acria. You can see why it's called a false acria, because it looks like an acria. It's a mimic of that particular form, which is form colvuli. It's got plain hyaline wingtips. The other form Boisdevalli, has got an orange spot there, is a mimic of the Akara acria and also the Waterberg acria as well. Again, a lot of people struggle to tell the difference when they're starting out. When you get used to them, you can see that the antennae are correct, whereas in an acria they're lax. And the whole jizz of the butterfly is different. It's a faster flyer. They sit with the wings flat open, pumping them up and down. In the middle on the right, you've got a sailor, a Neptis. So you know Neptis stretch all the way through Africa into southern Europe, all the way across Asia as far as the Far East and Japan. That's one of our local species, a streak sailor, Neptis gucci. We've got about half a dozen different species of them here. Bottom right is the guinea fowl, Hamanubida daedalus, which is a savanna butterfly, not a forest butterfly. It's found all the way across the savanna areas of Africa. That's a mating pair. The female's got her wings open and the male has got his wings closed. And then at the bottom left, we've got these gliders, Cymothoes. This is Cymothoe caranus, the blonde glider. Very strong sexual dimorphism, as you can see. The male's a creamy white butterfly with black edges, and the females are a black butterfly with white bands. We only get 2 species of Cymothoe here in South Africa, and the other one, Alcimeda, the battling glider, is like a smaller version of the blonde glider. The females are a bit variable. Some of them have got yellow or orange bands rather than white. Unfortunately, we don't get the red ones in South Africa that you do in Central Africa. And there's no chance of sneaking them into the country because they use a different type of food plant as well. These ones feed on a plant called either Kigelaria or the forest peach, which is shown in this picture here. And yeah, it's purely a forest butterfly. I do get them occasionally in my garden, but they're more in the high forests. Then we move to the true nymphalines and Nymphalinae. And at the top left in the large picture is one of the real iconic African butterflies, the common mother of pearl, Protagoniomorpha parhassus, which I don't think has got any equivalent on any other continent. In size, they vary from about the smaller winter forms can be around about 60 millimeters, but the big females funny enough, I say winter, the smaller summer forms. The summer forms are smaller. The winter forms are the really big ones. I get them in my garden. They're as big as 80 or 90 millimeters across. What the photo doesn't show you is the way those white wings flash all the way through from gold to purple to green in the sun. And the nearest thing I've ever seen to this is one of those pearl morphos like Daedamia from South America. They look very like them. And they probably follow a similar kind of ecological niche as well. The larvae feed on plants that grow in the undergrowth. That one's actually on its host plant. And then on the right there, we've got the southern gaudy commodore, which is another butterfly which is unique to Africa. One of the most extreme forms of seasonal dimorphism we know of. The wet season form, the summer form is orange, red or orange, and then the winter form is blue with red markings. You do get intermediates occasionally, and this is a grassland butterfly that's found on the edges of forests as well. And we do get them around here. They're quite common around our area. At the bottom right, we have a butterfly called the pirate, Catacloptera cloanthe, which is one of those butterflies that's got its own genus. There's only one member in the world. It's purely African. And you can see in that picture that like Apatura iris, the purple emperor, and some of the morphos, at certain angles, there's a beautiful purple sheen over the wings. It's actually also quite a gaudy butterfly. Bottom left, you'll see probably a very familiar butterfly to those of you living in Asia, Junernia erythea. This is the African subspecies, Madagascariensis, because that's where it was described from. Until recently, we used to call it the eyed pansy, which used to confuse visitors from Asia. We say, well, it's a blue pansy, you know? So we've actually bowed to the inevitable, and we've just renamed it the African blue pansy for the definition. And then in the middle there, we do have admirals here. Some of them are in the genus Vanessa, which is the same as the European and Indian admirals. But this is an Antenatia. That's an African genus of admirals, and you can see they've got very long tails. These are forest butterflies. They're very territorial. You find them in forest clearings, and you know it's a rather special insect that it's not easy to find. It's a beautiful one. That's been Infanidae. Now we move on to the Lycaenids, which are incredibly diverse. And I'm going to go through each one of the local subfamilies which we get here. These are Peritinae. Now, it's actually quite interesting. From what I know of Asian Peritinae, they tend to be brightly colored little butterflies with blue upper sides and so on. Ours are all black or yellow or white, and they have this specific habit of as larvae feeding on lichens, and as adults feeding on the honeydew from scale insects. You can see at the bottom the little Natal mottle buff. That one is feeding on a white scale insect in my garden. It's actually sucking honeydew. But the Miller's large buff on the bottom left there, found in colonies in trees that have got a certain type of aphid on them. That one's sucking one of that grey mesh you can see there is it's a type of aphid. The bottom right is a yellow Zulu. You can see just at the bottom, just below her, you see a little row of eggs which have been laid on a dead grass stem growing near some rocks. And the caterpillars will crawl down to the bottom of the grass and feed on the lichen on the rock. The Zulu yellow buff, pteriamemas are found all over tropical. Oh, hang on, touch the space bar. They're found all over the eastern side of Africa. This one's particularly rare in our area. It's only found around Zululand, as is the one just above it, the southern large glasswing, Ornithologos pucetia penningtoni. It's the only local member of quite a large genus that's found throughout tropical Africa. And to see these in South Africa, you've got to go up to Zululand and go to somewhere like False Bay, the Bella Peninsula, which are quite popular tourist spots. So people who visit the country, if you come at the right time of the year, late summer, early autumn, you've got a good chance of seeing them if we ever get back to having international tourism again. I saved the best till last, the rock sitters. We have two species of rock sitter here, the Amakosa rock sitter, which I show here, and the Natal rock sitter, which is found in the mountains, very similar to this one. The interesting thing about this butterfly is that the genus Jabania is totally endemic to South Africa. It's found nowhere else. The caterpillars feed on lichen. The adults don't feed. They can't feed on nectar from scale insects because they don't have a proboscis. And that one is a very rare subspecies that my friend Mark Liptrot, who I know is listening here now, he found a colony of them in our local nature reserve, which is a good thing because it's an endangered species. Right, moving on to a subfamily of Lycaenidae which take their strange feeding habits even further. I know you get Marletinae in Asia. There's that huge butterfly, which the Lithara bracilis, which lives in ants' nests and is about the size of a caraxes. These are related. The woolly legs, and I know Gigi particularly likes woolly legs. I remember her excitement at finding them. This is a common woolly legs, which is a bit of a misnomer because it's not common. uh, there's one, there's one, there was one species, Lactopneuma bibulus, and then we realized when Michel Libert revised the genus, what we were calling bibulus most of the time was one called Laches, which is different to this one. It's got a lot more white on the underside. You can see this one here, this little male is having a wonderful time sucking the honeydew from those cushion scale insects. And the larvae of the butterfly, which are nocturnal, they actually feed on those insects now. They're full-on carnivores. As are the one at the bottom left, that's the only existing photograph of a live southern purple. I've never seen one. I think there's only 21 records of the butterfly. That was taken by Jeremy Dobson just before he caught it for his collection. It's not endangered, it's just very scarce. It looks like a woolly legs when it flies, or so I'm told. It's found along the coast from southern Natal through to the Eastern Cape. And funnily enough, further north in Africa, there are lots and lots of them. In Kenya, there's one called Marshallii, which is very common in forest clearings. I don't know why our one is so rare. I keep looking for it. Then we have the scollies. And I've put 4 examples of scolly here. The genus Thestor, which is almost endemic to South Africa. The basuta, the one at the top, that's the only one that's not endemic. It's also found in Zimbabwe. That's a female, and she's actually laying eggs in the dirt. And that's what these Thestors do, because the caterpillars in the early stages feed on scale insects, but when they get bigger, they're always found near colonies of a certain type of ant, the pugnacious ant, Anophelepis. And the ants carry the eggs and the larvae down into their nests where they feed them, just like birds feed cuckoos. The caterpillars carry pheromones which fool the ants into behaving as if the ants were brood, the caterpillars were their brood. And basuta is found all over the eastern side of southern Africa, from Zimbabwe down to around about the Eastern Cape. And then in the Cape itself, in the Cape Floral area, there are many, many species, something like 40 odd species of Thestor, because there's been a recent speciation event. We don't exactly know what drove it, but there's quite a few different species. A lot of them have got buff or yellow upper sides, like that mountain scolly you can see there that was photographed down near Cape Town. The Jonas Kop scolly, Thestor steveni, that's found on one one mountain, called Jonas Kop down in the Cape and nowhere else. And then the Rockerberg scolly, which was discovered by my friend Ernest Pringle. That's only found on the Rockerberg and the Swabiaberg near Sutherland. If you remember that picture of the Karoo with the man with the butterfly net in the middle of the picture, that's where that butterfly is found. And you see that female there is laying her eggs on a sprig of dead grass in the middle of the Karoo with nothing green in sight. But the caterpillars will get fed by the ants, and the ants are the ones that farm. They farm the things that eat your house. White ants, termites. That's right. The ants farm termites, and they feed the caterpillars on regurgitated termite. Then we move on to the gee whiz group of the lycaenids, and we know you've got a lot of beautiful Theclinae in Asia as well, and in South America. The Theclinae is the subfamily that has all the flashy lycaenids, and one of the flashiest one is a southern sapphire, Iolus silas, which we find around here wherever you find its host plant, which is a mistletoe called Erianthera dregii, the hairy mistletoe. And the males love to perch on shiny leaf bushes and open their wings and flash in the sun. They're lovely things and not difficult to spot. In the forests on the eastern side of the country, you get the yellow-banded sapphires. There are several species of these. This is our Natal yellow-banded sapphire. Again, this butterfly is blue on top, like the southern sapphire, but it's got this. The southern sapphire's got a plain pearly white underside, very similar to the peacock royal you get in India. But the yellow-banded sapphires have got this incredible reddish ochre banding on the underside with black spots. It's a special creature. And then we've also got an Iolus here, which is it's an anomaly. It's yellow. We don't know whether it mimics one of the Pieridae. We don't know, but the saffron sapphire is found all across the drier areas of northeastern South Africa. And that particular one I reared from a larva. In fact, that butterfly you find more often as larvae than you do as adults, because the adults like to hang around in the areas of savanna when the leaves are turning yellow. They like to sit in the trees that have got yellow leaves. And I know a lot of people like to see that butterfly because it's such a different one. The underside is very reminiscent of some of the perissomas you get in South America. Bottom right is one of our fig tree blues, the Myrina dermaptera. There are only, I think, 3 species of Myrina in Africa. They're only found in Africa, very long tails. And a photograph doesn't really do it justice. In fact, you need to video this butterfly to really appreciate it, because the blue is the same blue you get on something like Morphocypris or Morphoretinor. It's actually eye-wateringly blue. And luckily, the males are fond of sitting with their wings open. And if you know the right fig tree to look at, you can get a photograph. In the middle at the bottom, we got a Judorix. And we know Judorix are found all over, the old world tropics. We have several species in Africa. This is Darkleys, beautiful orange and black male with purple sheening on his forewings. Caterpillars feed on the seeds of various plants. Very territorial. They find a hilltop on top of the forest, and they sit there and chase away every other butterfly. Then at the bottom left, we've got one of the Plectini, which is unique to Africa, the genus Capes, which feeds on plants of the family Proteaceae, which are found all over Africa, and also they're found in Australia and New Zealand, but they don't get Capes butterflies down there. And the caterpillar bores a hole into the side of the bud of a protea and lives off the seeds. In fact, that's what playboys do. A lot of these butterflies feed on high nutrition value host plants, used typically on growing shoots and seeds, or even other insects, which of course are very high in protein. Now we have the one that I know takes everybody's breath away, and everybody wants to come and see it. It's not the easiest butterfly to find because you've got to come to South Africa in spring. They start flying around about the end of September in the middle of the country, and you get them more in November. We know a couple of places down here in KZN where you can find them. Hutchinson's high flyer, Aphanes hutchinsoni. This is the subfamily Aphaneini. Again, I know we get Aphaneini all over the world, but these are, in South Africa, we've got some of the most spectacular ones. Hutchinson's high flyers larvae, they are quite interesting. They feed on my favorite tree, the wild syringa, Burkia africana, and the female lays her eggs on the growing shoots of the plant, where the larvae eat the shoots of the tree. When they are in third instar, they crawl down into a nearby ant's nest, which is inside a beetle larva burrow, where they do something that we don't know for sure what they do. We don't know if they eat the ant brood or if the ants feed them like they do the festors. We don't know, because nobody has ever managed to breed this butterfly all the way through from the egg to the adult. We keep trying, but so far nobody's managed. And it's an amazing sight. Those white spots on the underside are actually brilliant pearlescent white. And when you're walking through the hills, you can see them from about 1 kilometer away, shining in the sun. On the right, because I'm the presenter and I can be selfish, my favorites are the Chryseritis genus, particularly the opals of the genus Chryseritis. And they're one of the reasons I live here. I saw these in the British Museum when I was a kid. I got a tour around the back of the British Museum, and I wanted to see things like Kalima. Wanted to see things like. That is. What are we doing? Sorry.
Sorry, someone had unmuted. I muted him back. Yeah, you can continue.
Okay, right. Yeah. These are found. These blue ones are only found down in the Cape area, the Cape Mountains. That famous photograph I showed you earlier. That's the place where you find the Plutus opal, and you can see the Uranus opal, which is found in the mountains near Cape Town. You can see it's got this incredible bright blue showing. It takes a bit of photographic skill to get the right angle. And as you move around them, the color changes from acid green to blue to purple. And these are tiny butterflies. They're about the size of a Lycaena flex. They're no bigger than your thumbnail in the larger ones. And to see them, you've got to go to the Cape. Luckily, there are a couple of places near Cape Town at sea level, literally at sea level, right next to the sea, where you can see Chryseritis thisbe, which is similar to these ones. And it's a beautiful sight. And you can see them most months of the year as well. At the bottom right is the king copper, Tylopelia sardonyx. Now that is our biggest Lycaenid. nothing that pictured a really great scale, but that butterfly is the size of a small Caraxes, something like Caraxes jalusa. It's got a wingspan of between 50 and 60 millimeters in the female, and between sort of 35 and 50 millimeters in the male. And it's purely a Karoo butterfly. Caterpillars are antisociated. They live on these trees whose leaves have got hardly any moisture in them, and you can see that one sitting on the Karoo floor, and it's very well camouflaged amongst the rocks. On the upper side is orange with black bands. Related to it is the genus Trimenia. Again, a lot of these butterflies have got these beautiful silver markings on the underside, and that's another one that lives in the Karoo. And then at the bottom left, we've got a silverline, which I know silverlines are familiar to anybody living in Asia Minor, North Africa, Japan, and we've got several species here. This particular one is Sigaritis namaquus, which is only found in Namaqualand in the succulent Karoo. Again, it's one of these ones with the beautiful pearlescent silver marks. The upper side in the male is a similar kind of iridescent shifting blue to the Uranus opal. Then we have Polyomatidae, which are found all over the world. We have the large cupids, Lepidopterists here, which are not purely African. You do find them in Asia Minor. I believe that some of them are found in places like Israel, Jordan. Torben Larsen used to go there and find them. Lebanon, they're found as well. This is one of our most spectacular and largest ones, Lepidopterists astris, which is found all the way along the eastern mountain chain from just north of Cape Town right up into northern Limpopo, where it's got a range of host plants. And photographs, again, only can say so much because that blue is really glittery. And they're glorious things. You come to South Africa in August and September, climb one of the hills in central Natal, and you can watch these things flying around. If you're very lucky, you get up very early in the morning, you'll catch one sunning itself, but they're not easy to photograph. On the top right, we've got a ciliate blue, and again, I know ciliate blues anthenes are found all over tropical Africa and also into Asia. That particular one is large. Sorry, say again?
He explains that.
Yeah.
Oh, muted it. What's going on? You stopped it.
Can I carry on? Okay. They used to be called hairtails in Africa, but again, because we know all the way around the world down into Australia, they're called ciliate blues. We decided to harmonize ourselves with the rest of the world. And then down at the bottom right, we've got some piros or pies. And also you get piros and pies in certainly I know in Asia Minor, where they tend to feed on the Ziziphus family of plants. And we've got a couple of examples here. The Hinza piro, which is a beautiful translucent iridescent blue. And you can see the black spots on the white background shining through the blue. The black pie, which is black and white on the upper side, doing what a lot of lycaenids do, sitting on a mud puddle, drinking animal urine from the mud. Very fond of that. Then we have a misnamed butterfly, the bush bronze, called a bronze because most of the butterflies in his genus Cacarius are bronze in color, but this one's not, it's blue. That's a female. The male is plain blue on top. And then at the bottom left, we've got the Croupius blue, which has got these beautiful streaks of iridescent copper on a blue background. And this is a butterfly found all across the grassland areas of South Africa. In fact, anywhere you've got grassland, basically. And even down in the fynbos, there's a subspecies down there which doesn't have any copper on it. So it's not really called the Copious blue. It's got the same host plants as the Chryseritis. It feeds on Thesium, which is a root parasite. Okay, gone through the lycaenids, now we're on to the Pieridae, which I know are familiar to a lot of people. And again, I've tried to concentrate on periods which are not familiar to people who don't live in Africa. And the big picture there is a vine-leaf vagrant, Ironia cleodora, feeding on one of our best butterfly plants, which rejoices in the common name of wild dacha. Dacha being African language for cannabis. The leaves resemble those of cannabis. Leonotis leonurus is its Latin name. And it's a beautiful sight to see one of these. These are large white butterflies. The Eronias and Nephronias are the biggest of the family in Africa. The biggest of them approach the size of Hebomea glaucipi. This one's about half the size. So it's got a wingspan of about 60 millimeters. Then at the top right, we've got the Cambridge vagrant, which is blue periods are not that common. And this is one of the bluest. This is a specialist butterfly that's only found in the forests of the northeast of South Africa. There's one record from near Durban, which is amazing. It's never been seen there since, and I was there when it was caught, so I can vouch for it. Its male is a blue butterfly. The female is white with a yellow hindwing. Then in the middle on the right, we get these glorious things called purple tips in Africa, which I'm pretty sure we don't find anywhere else. This particular one is a bushveld purple tip, and you can see there that the iridescence on the purple wingtips. You've got a purple patch with blue iridescence shining over it. It's one of the most beautiful butterflies. All reminds of a Roman emperor with his purple edged toga. Then at the bottom, we got the caper whites, Belinois. I know you get caper whites in India. There's one called the Pioneer. We get that in South Africa as well. We used to call it the brown veined white, but we've recently renamed it. Well, we call it the Pioneer caper white, just so people get the message. I'm sorry, I've got dogs that are making a noise. Shut up! Okay, and then in the middle at the bottom, we got this one called the lemon traveller, Pteroculus subfasciatus, and it's a relative of the genus Calotus. It used to be in the Calotus and it was moved across. And one of these beautiful insects you can just about see on the edge of the wingtip, you can see a little bit of blue. When the sun hits that butterfly at the right angle, the top half of the forewing is iridescent blue, like a gas flame. It's feeding on a little plant. It used to be called Vennonia, but it's been moved into a new genus now. That plant grows in disturbed places all over the savanna areas of Africa, and wherever it grows, you find it covered in butterflies. And then at the bottom left, we have a dotted border, Mylophoris rupellii, Hemus, the local subspecies. Again, it's feeding on Tetrasolago, a good butterfly plant. Mylophoris are found all over Africa, tropical Africa at any rate. And my friend Hayden Roringash is busy revising the genus, and it's going to double in size, we think. The caterpillars all feed on members of they feed on Loranthaceae, mistletoes and matchflowers, and they are very closely related to your Indian Delias, or Asian Delias. Similar. The larvae look very similar. They got similar habits, and they also tend to be brightly coloured. That's our brightest coloured one is Rupellii, but further north in Africa you get ones that are black and orange, and red and yellow. They're beautiful creatures, and I'm very lucky we get them around here. Then moving on to the real big flashies, the genus Papilio. The one at the top left is the largest of the true Papilios in Africa. I know that Zalmoxis and Antimachus are still in the genus Papilio, but I know it's only a matter of time before they get moved into the Ornithoptera group, because they're definitely Ornithoptera. You don't get them anywhere near South Africa. They're only found in Central and West Africa. This emperor swallowtail, you get them all the way up into Kenya, always on the eastern side of the Rift Valley. On the western side, you get a close relative that's got slightly different spotting. But the one we get down here, there are several subspecies in South Africa. Each patch of forest has basically got its own subspecies. This is the biggest one, Zuluensis. That's a male, and that male is enormous. It's about 140 millimeters across. And I've seen females. I've never caught a female, or I've never even photographed one. But I've seen females that must have been 160 or even bigger millimeters across. They're huge. They feed on Rutaceae, and they're quite easy to breed. If you know where to find the caterpillars, you can find the butterfly. Whenever I bred them, they always turn out to be males. And then the top right, we've got one of our local member, the green banded swallowtail, which is a lot of in Africa. This is a narrow green banded swallowtail, Papilio nereus. Further north, you get them where the wings are almost totally blue with a black border. And then at the bottom right and middle right, we got a swallowtail called Dardanus, where the male is always a creamy white or a yellowy cream butterfly with black bands and long tails. The females are polymorphic and they're mimics. And you can see that one, the form Trophonius, mimics the African plain tiger, Danaus chrysippus. Not a very good mimic. I mean, anybody who knows butterflies would soon tell you that's a swallowtail and not a Danaid. But yeah, it's probably good enough to fool a bird. At the bottom middle, we've got one of a tailless swallowtails, Papillia escheriioides, which is a purely forest insect that's feeding on Impatiens hospiteri, which is one of the plants that grows along streams in forests. It won't grow away from streams. That's a male. You get similar butterflies to that all over tropical Africa, and the female is another mimic. It mimics the layman. And at the bottom left, we have a special. That's the only Papilio that's endemic to South Africa, Papilio euphranor, which is only found in the high cold forests of the east. And unlike all the other Papilios whose larvae feed on Rutaceae, I know about Papilio demodocus, which I don't show here, is very similar to the Indian Demolius, feeds on cultivated citrus. There's also one population in the Cape that uses uses umbelliferae, uses fennel, like the European swallowtails do. But that's what they use. The euphranor type butterflies only feed on laurels. They feed on Cryptocarya woodii here in South Africa. And everywhere you go in Africa, you'll find lots of species of citrus or Rutaceae feeders, but only one laurel feeder. So down here you get euphranor. In Malawi and further north, we get horribilis in West Africa, and there's only about half a dozen species of these things. And where they fit on the family tree of Papilios is at the moment subject to some DNA work that's going on. Also in the Papilionidae, we have the graphiums. I know we get graphiums all over the old world. I think in America they've been, what was a graphium has now been moved to a different genus. But all of our local ones feed on the Ananaceae, the custard apple family of plants. A large striped swordtail is found all over the sort of drier north half of South Africa and right up into Central Africa as well. It's quite a large butterfly, sort of 75, 80 millimeters across. The blue on these butterflies, by the way, is chemical. It's not structural. And if you catch one of these and put it in the collection, within a few months, it'll turn just brown or cream. You won't see the color. So you've got to take a photograph to appreciate the color. The mamba swordtail, Colonna, that is found, it's purely a coastal butterfly. It starts just a few tens of kilometers north of Durban, and it goes right up into Kenya. And again, it's found along the coast only. And then at the bottom left, you can see another swordtail, Polycines, the small striped swordtail, which is also found all over Africa, all over tropical Africa. And that's a small striped swordtail. You can see the difference is that the forewing bars on Polycines are straight, and on Amphius they're crooked, which is one of those nice visual cues. And at the bottom left, we have the vein swordtail, Leonidas, which is found, there's only one subspecies, a nominate, and it's found all over subtropical Africa and tropical Africa. And it's another mimic of Tiramala tiparana. It's another Danaid mimic. We also have these white ladies. I've got two species in South Africa, which I'm showing here. Angolanus, the Angola white lady, showing the underside, and Morania, showing you the upper side. And the difference between these two butterflies is that if you look at the spot at the end of the cell, it's one kidney-shaped blotch in Morania, and it's broken up into an L and a dot in Angolanus. And this is a mating pair here. That male, he's flying so fast. I didn't have my camera on 2000th of a second, so I couldn't freeze his motion. But you can see that yellowish blur. Those are his hair pencils. That's why they're called graphium, because of their hair pencils. Graphium being Latin for pencil. And he's pushing pheromones into the air. And this female here, you can see she's ready, and she's just full of love, waiting to mate. And not often you see that, actually. It's quite a rare sight. Then we move on to the Hesperidae, which are coming towards the end of the families now. And a lot of people, of course, are prejudiced towards Hesperids and say that they're really a type of moth. But I always say that all Lepidoptera are just Lepidoptera. There's no real difference between a butterfly and a moth. And these are some of the more spectacular species you get in the country. That top specimen there is, I know Mark will recognize that because it's photographed. He was with me when I photographed it. That's a bicolored skipper, Avantis bicolor, which was until recently on the endangered list because we knew so few places where you could find it. But recently we've been doing our citizen science projects where we've uncovered a lot of new habitats. So it's been moved down to the, it's now no longer endangered. It's been moved, I think, down to the threatened status now, or near threatened. It's a hill topper. If you want to see the males, you've got to go climb a hill next to a forest and wait, hopefully. Females are found near the host plant, and occasionally they come up to the hilltops to look for males. Very similar is the white cloak skipper, Leucocartone levubu, which you can see here in the middle right. You see, if you can see underneath his forelegs, there's some hairs sticking down. And those are sex pheromones. And he lifts his legs up, and the hairs release pheromones into the air, attracting females. And the buff-tip skipper, which is related to it here, you can see a mating pair, does the same thing. He's a relative. Isn't that amazing bit of bird dropping resemblance? When that butterfly sits on a leaf, it looks just like a fresh bird dropping. And these grey patches are actually hyaline. If he's close enough to the leaf, you can see the green shining through. We have a lot of butterflies in the newly raised subfamily Tagiadini, which these butterflies are in. The large flats, Selenorinus mackenzie, is one of a group of butterflies which is found all over tropical Africa. That's one of our local forest species. We've also got these ones called Celiades, or policemen. The reason they're called policemen is because they find a patch of bushveld or forest, and then the males, they got a territory, we call it a beat, and they fly around this beat, marking their territory with scent. There's only one species that we've actually recorded in what it does. It actually has a scent hairs on its abdomen, but it touches onto a leaf. Here's two species. You get the red tab policeman, which we find around here in Durban, and then the two-pip policeman, which is very rare around here. It's more of a savanna butterfly found inland around Johannesburg, those sort of places. Also in the skippers, we have, and we got lots of skippers here, which, I mean, if I tried to show you all the types of skippers, we'd be here all day. We have here two subfamilies, the Hesperiinae and the Heteropterini, which I know you get both of those subfamilies in Asia and Europe. This one here, I know Mark's going to be scratching his head because the Latin name has changed. Until recently, it was Codestes mohozutsa. Now it's Nervia mohozutsa. Don't shoot me, I'm not a taxonomist. And we changed the common name to painted rangers, which means my book's out of date already, because this was done just after the book came out. And also down here, the spangled ranger, Doxocalicles, also had a name change. These butterflies are known for having these beautiful orange undersides. Now, this one hasn't been reassigned to a genus. It's still Codestes bacomo. I was with Mark and we photographed that one in our near nature reserve, and that's got a brilliant yellow underside with black dots, but it's still a Codestes. Strange. Here we have a night fighter. Now, these are African butterflies. I don't think you get anything like these in Asia. They are evening flyers. They're crepuscular. They very seldom fly during the day. The caterpillars feed on various monocotyledonous plants, and they are quite large. They're about the size of a small hawk moth, and they fly like a hawk moth. The wings buzz. They don't hover. They settle on flowers to put their proboscis in, unlike hawk moths, which hover. And then we've got also two of the Heteropterini, the checkered skippers, I think they call them in Europe and Asia. The gold-spotted sylph, Meticella metis, which is found all the way from Cape Town right up into Central Africa. And then the marsh sylph, which, unlike the gold-spotted, is extremely limited in its range. It's only found in certain marshes in the central part of the country, around Johannesburg and Pretoria. Again, until recently, it was on the endangered list, but because of the work that the citizen scientists have been doing, we found more colonies, and it's now been downgraded to near threatened. So those are the butterfly families. Now, just moving on to the second half of the presentation, which I was asked to do, to say what we do here as regards conservation. Well, one of the things we had here was, in common with the rest of the world, collecting was being severely frowned upon by the authorities, and they're on the verge of banning it. And the society, through its then president, Herman Staudy, who's a very, very good, I hesitate to say the word politician, he's a good diplomat, was able to to get people to talk to one another and listen to one another. And in the end, we worked out an agreement with the provincial nature conservation bodies to create information rather than, and they don't mind us collecting as long as you've got a permit, as long as you stay away from the endangered species. We've got a gentleman's agreement not to collect the really rare ones. And you don't need to anyway, we know where they are. Citizen science projects, we've done lots of those, and also there's some more collaborative projects on endangered species. So let's just move on to some of these things. First of all, Herman, who was my predecessor as president, used to own a company that builds and maintains buses, the biggest bus builder in Africa. And he was able to get his maintenance department to do a statistical count of dead butterflies on bus radiator grills, and did some fairly heroic stats, and worked out based on the total known area of radiator grills on buses and cars. Look at that, I said 120 trillion insects, not butterflies, insects killed on South Africa's roads annually. A similar study was in Italy, by the way. So this is not just pseudoscience, this is real science. A motorist traveling 10,000 kilometers a year is responsible for 3 to 30 million insect road deaths annually. And in Europe, that Italian study showed that cars kill more insects in 1 minute than what butterfly collectors killed butterfly and moth collectors have killed in a century. And he took these stats along and he showed this graph of the direct impact on butterfly populations, because we know that natural predators, birds, parasitoids, wasps, flies, lizards, that sort of thing, kill 80% of them. Motorized transport kills 10%. Now, if you wonder why there's been this huge drop-off in butterfly and moth populations, there's one of your reasons. And he didn't even look at pesticides when he did this study. And then other human impacts, which is pesticides, I think 10% is actually not correct. I think it's more than 10%, but we don't know for sure. And of course, the collector is minuscule. I mean, I think collectors around the world, even the professional collectors, if they collect more than 100,000 or 200,000 butterflies and moths in a year, I'm not saying that all collecting is right, and I'm not saying that the commercial guys are a good thing, because they focus on rare and beautiful species and they can do damage. But just general butterfly collecting by amateurs, what we pointed out to the authorities, they had 99% scientific value with I don't know how many 0.17% impact, and all of the killers 0% scientific value with 99.99993% impact. And this got listened to. In actual fact, the conservation body said, okay, what are you guys offering? You know, what if we say to you, we'll give you butterfly collecting permits, you have to stick to certain conditions, but what are we going to get out of it? Conservation. And this is what came out of it, certain citizen science projects. The first one was the South African Butterfly Conservation Assessment, which started out in 2004, just before my first field guide came out, which was really well timed. And it still carries on now as Lepimap. It's a continuous virtual museum, an online virtual museum. This then grew into Salka, because we then expanded it to the whole of Lepidoptera. And also some of the statisticians pointed out that the stats we'd based the red listing on were a little bit dodgy, because we'd relied on records going back to before 1900, when people didn't have GPSs. So we had to revalidate all the records that we had from the past, and lots of them went locally extinct. We also have an amazing thing called the Caterpillar Rearing Group, and there are lots of other ones as well. There's iSpot, iNaturalist, but those are not aimed at Lepidoptera specifically. People use them for butterflies and moths, but they are generalists. I'm talking about specifically Lepidoptera focused program. Oh, Lepimap. What is Lepimap?
Sorry, someone is unmuted. I'll mute him again. You can carry on.
Okay. Lepimap is a collaborative venture between the BDI, the Biodiversity Development Institute of the Percy Fitzpatrick Institute of Ornithology, funnily enough, down in Cape Town, and Lepsoc Africa. And it started out as SABCA. And what we did first of all was we in SABCA, the Norwegian government, the Oppenheimer family, and local conservation donated millions to the project. And people went all over the world, wherever there were South African butterflies in the butterfly collection. I had a young lady came to stay with me for a month and digitized my entire collection. They went to the British Museum, they went to Vuren in Belgium, they went to the Abri in Africa, and spent months and what we were able to do was get a gap analysis of where we had data from and where we didn't have data from. And then we had a really, between 2007, 2011, when it really got started, we did a lot of focused butterfly trips where we did some collecting, but a lot of photography. Around about that time, when digital photography really took off, and that's how the museum got going. May 2013, and I still remember the launch party. It was one of the most raucous I've ever been to. The book, which is the seminal work, the Red List and Atlas of butterflies of South Africa, Lesotho, and Swaziland, covered all species, not just the rare ones, and edited by those people at the bottom. Sylvia Missinero was the lead for the project, and we still got those on sale. Actually, if anybody wants one, I think they're about 350 rand each. And then in 2013, we morphed it into Lepimap. The SABCA Virtual Museum became Lepimap. And Lepimap on the 1st of May stood like this. Over 500,000 records, growing rapidly. And of those, 470,000 are butterflies and nearly 80,000 are moths. But the moth numbers are growing rapidly. And of those records, a third of a million, almost exactly a third of a million, come from collections from SABCA. And the virtual museum on the 1st of May stood at 214,659, which is growing all the time. We just had our best April ever, in fact, in terms of submissions. What does it look like? There's a page from Lepimap, which I can see as one of the identification panel, and there are some recent submissions from Andrew Kruger and Roy Johnston, who've sent their photographs in. You can see there are three butterflies and a moth. And what we do is, first of all, we filter them out into butterflies and moths, because different members of the identification panel do different identifications. And I can tell you, I know what they all are. That's Telkinia ensedon at the top, and then there's a moth called Archaea leonardi, Junonia metallica, the brown pansy, and at the bottom is Papiliodardanus, one of the female forms of Papiliodardanus, the mocha swallowtail. And look at that number there. This was yesterday, the 9th of May, 215,938. Now, if you look on the 1st of May, we were 214,659. So that's something like 800 records taken in, 8 days. That just shows you how powerful it is. We've got people all over Africa, not just South Africa, all over Africa now, snapping butterflies and moths and submitting them to Lepimap. The result is that we've got data going back. In fact, we got data going back beyond 1900. We even logged specimens that people caught in the 19th century. But you can see the Lepimap records, the growth that's happened over the past 120 years. And that last histogram post you can see there is 2020, and you can see by the end of 2020 we'll probably have gone beyond 30,000 records. And that just shows you the power of citizen science. Sure, looking at the coverage, by October 2013, we had the purple, obviously the purple squares are where you've got the most records, and where it's white, there are very few records or none. And you can see the main tourist, the main tourist and
Sorry, I muted him back.
Okay, right. Now you can see here, this is the sort of Durban area in inland, Zululand, which is very popular for tourism, the Cape, the Knysna area of the Eastern Cape, and also Cape Town itself. That's where most of the records came from. And here are the eastern parts of the country where, again, a lot of tourists go. And mainly we find tourists and butterfly Lepidopterists, butterfly fans, butterflies, you name it, they go there. Look now, 1st of May 2020, look at the change. In, 7 years, there's very few white squares left. And these are all in the desert areas, the really, really arid areas where you can drive 200 kilometers and not see a single butterfly. Trust me, I've been there. And some of the mapping work that's going on takes that into account. Some interesting stuff going on, which I'll tell you about now. What are the outputs? Well, first of all, there's a Red List and Atlas, which I showed you earlier. We have things called extrapolated distribution maps. Any of you who've got one of my field guides or the app will see those. Recently, which is brand new, interpolated maps. There's been a national biodiversity assessment, which was published in 2018. That's what SALCA led into. lists of threatened species, research information for researchers doing work on Lepidoptera. Some really good stuff going on there. Absolutely pertinent, real, fresh statistics leading into information. Then also conservation plans for endangered species. Corel is the conservators of rare and endangered Lepidoptera, and others as well. So let's look at some of these. Well, first of all, mapping. At the top in the middle there, that's what's called a 95 percentile probability map. And that shows you for a butterfly called Colotis antipipica visa, the red tip, which I think that's found in India as well. That's our local subspecies. That's a South African. Forget about Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, and Mozambique. We didn't cover those. We shouldn't really have had them on the map. But that's where it's found from. That's from the SABCA data. And what we did was we used the rainfall and the temperature data for the known localities, and we extrapolated it and if you look at the full statistical data, it looks like a heat map. So the 99 percentile obviously will be smaller, and the 90 percentile is larger. We chose the 95 percentile because it's pretty much the neatest one. Smoothed it using Photoshop, and those maps are in the app, and they're in the second edition of the field guide. But now Dr. Underhill, Professor Underhill at the BDI, has been playing. He actually is a professional statistician. He started out as a mathematician, then he got kidnapped because he's a birder, and then he moved across into biostatistics. And in fact, he's the father of citizen science. All these projects around the world, like iSpot and iNaturalist, have all been started up by ex-students of Les. So he's a real founder of a discipline. And the raw data for this butterfly, you can see there were 1 or 2 records from outside South Africa as well. Oops, there we go. Each dot, and the dot size it tells you how many records there were there. I think it's precipitate to it's proportionate to the size of the number of records for that particular quarter degree square. And each square on these maps is a quarter of a degree of latitude or longitude. And you can see that it's pretty, we weren't far out with our map. Remember, this is talking about probability, this is actual. But Les has developed some really sexy software now called interpolative technology. What it does is, it looks at the number of records of each of these butterflies as a proportion of the total records that you see in that quarter degree square. Because in the tropical areas where there might be sort of, 400 records per square, and only like here, for instance, there might be 200 records per square and only 1 red tip, right? Or maybe 20 red tips. Here, there might be 5 records per square and 1 of them's a red tip. So the proportion of red tips there is much higher than it is here. He's built a computer program which gives you a heat map. The inner core, which is the purple dots, which are, we think, where it really, really lives. The outer core is where it flies to, and it may exist in small areas. And the periphery are where it's there, but it's rare. These are the maps we're going to use, if I can, if Les has got them all ready and I get permission to use them in the new version of the app when we bring it out, because it gives you a really good idea of where you're going to find the butterfly. Lists of threatened species, the SABCA 2013 red list, we had a full list of stats there. Unfortunately, the 2018 one, the online version of the book and the summary volume that I've got doesn't have the fine detail. So what I can tell you, there's still 3 extinct butterfly species in our area, so it hasn't changed. There were 14 critically endangered, 27 endangered, 19 vulnerable, 5 near threatened and 2 data deficient. Near threatened, data deficient and rare in total 14, and least concern, which means not of conservation concern, 717. So we assessed 794 taxa in 2013. We did 799 in 2018. And you can see there now, the number of threatened species went up by 18. We moved a lot of butterflies out of near threatened or data deficient up into threatened. So that threatened is the sum of the endangered and vulnerable, or particularly endangered butterflies. The near threatened and data deficient, the data deficient just ones we don't know enough. The numbers came down to 40, to 6, so it went up to 62. Sorry, that's right, went up to 62. And least concern came down by 61. So we did a much better job of assessing our butterflies, and there's some moths in there as well now, because remember, these are species. Now, some of the research that's coming out of this, Craig Peter, who's Associate Prof at Department of Botany at Rhodes University, used Lepimap on his study on the pollination of orchids. That photograph there, that yellow spot on that, that butterfly's proboscis is an orchid pallidium, pollinarium, sorry. And these butterflies, particularly Satyrini, are known to be major pollinators of the orchids. This is a Table Mountain Beauty, Aeropates tulbarki. You can see that butterfly there is our national flower, the red Deezer. You can see how big the flower is, and that's the only known pollinator of that plant. The butterfly goes extinct, the plant goes extinct. And then Gerard Taravera, who has just published an incredible paper on Vanessa Cardui, where they found all sorts of amazing things. I mean, this butterfly makes the American monarch look small beer when it comes to migrating. Every year they go all the way from southern Africa, South America, not Australia. The Australian population is locked up in Australia, but all over the world they go north and they fly over the deserts and the mountains, and they end up in North Asia, Northern Europe, as far north as the UK, Scandinavia. And what they found was they go so far to the edge of the desert, the Sahel in Africa, and there they sort of estivate for a while, and they create a new generation. And the next generation, in one hit in spring, the Northern Hemisphere spring, flies at high altitude over the Sahara, over the Mediterranean, and lands up in Europe. And through DNA studies and some incredible citizen science data, Gerard was able to actually work out the migration pattern of Vanessa Cardui. Then we have the caterpillar rearing group, which is that was born out of that man Herman Staudy again with his projects. He is a mothman, and he wanted to do a field guide to the moths of South Africa. And I remember when he announced it at one of our conferences, he said he reckoned it would take 2 years to do. And I fell off my chair laughing and said, Herman, it took me 20 years to do the butterfly field guide. Who are you trying to kid? And he said, well, I'm German. But it's 20 years later, and the book is just about going into gestation, largely due to the taxonomists. I know I like to malign them, but in terms of moths, they've been very necessary because there was so much doubt and false information about which moths are related to which. And what he did was he involved all the amateur lepidopterists, and ladies and teachers are particularly good at doing this. Every time you find a caterpillar, rear it through. And he created a Facebook group and a Dropbox folder. And if you've done a successful rearing and you submit it, you get that badge on the left. You cannot join without a rearing. You can't pay. It's purely you've got to do a rearing, and it's got to be in a form that's acceptable to scientific research. So that particular one there is a beautiful big Saturnid caterpillar. It's one of our local, I think it's the Janissambea, the speckled emperor. And it says here that the rationale is the ability to identify early stages of the knowledge of the host plants is of fundamental importance, understanding their interactions, biogeographical, economic impact, conservation, and only 13% of the Lepidopteran fauna of our 10,000 species in Southern Africa. And that's Southern Africa. And the rest of Africa is probably closer, with moths included, probably well more than 100,000. And the images or illustrations of the early stages are only available for a fraction. I think there was only something like 1% that were known. And now the number of known life histories has gone way beyond 13%. I'm not too sure exactly what it's on, but I think it's around about 25% now. So what they did was they created a scoring system. They said, right, all the way through, even if you breed a citrus swallowtail and a lemon tree, you still get a point because it's confirmation. Right up to the top, you get 10 points for where you find a new species of moth, which has happened several times, and a new species of houseplant as well. You get 10 points for that. And then recognition hierarchy. I think we've only got one platinum rearer, and that's Herman. We've got a couple of people who've got to gold. I know Sun is heading rapidly up the list. I think she must be heading way beyond expert now. I'm still green. And there's an example of one of the Geometridae, and forgive me, I don't know what species it is, but it's one of the ones that they reared through. And just some because I'm not going to bore you with huge amounts of stats, but this is to March 2019, which is the last time the stats were released. They're about to release them again for this year. I think they would have done if it wasn't for COVID-19. And the project had done just under 4,000 rearings, of which in the blue ones, less than half of them were repeats of already known, and orange is new. Doesn't mean new species, just means a new to science record. It's a new life history. We knew about the moth, but we didn't know, or the butterfly, but we didn't know what it was feeding on, or what the caterpillar looked like. In terms of species, 597 new species records, and host plant records, 209, nearly 3,000 new host plant records. This is a very powerful project. Looking at other LepSoc collaborations, we've already spoken about SABCO and LepiMap. We've spoken about SALCA, Lepidopterists, which is our internal specimen labeling and data capture program, which is currently being, at the moment, you can only get it as a very lengthy download from the society. But I know that the people are working on making it a web-based system, and maybe amalgamating it with LepiMap and my own butterfly app, which is also capable of generating data. Career Biogaps, which is specifically a job that we did, or some of our members did, going into the Karoo doing biodiversity due diligence for areas of the Karoo which unfortunately were being earmarked for shale gas extraction, in other words, fracking. And the data that they produced was instrumental in getting most of those proposals refused on conservation grounds. BED, Butterfly Evolutionary Diversity, that's a high-level DNA project aimed at working at the higher-level evolutionary relationships between butterflies. And Coral, which is the custodians of rare and endangered Lepidoptera, it's the only one I'm going to deal with now, and I'm going to show you a few examples. I know we're running out of time. Here's some butterflies which are very rare or endangered. Now, the Soma River opal, Chrysoritis lincurum, it's one of the ones that doesn't have the blue. Only known from one tiny sandstone ridge in some grassland near some Afromontane forest near Mbulu. I've been there, I took those photographs. It's very similar to some of our other butterflies, but it's got this black marking, excuse me, along the costa, which the other ones don't have. This one here, and that one, by the way, some of us don't even think it's a good species. This one definitely is. It is a unique butterfly. It's in the Chrysoritis, and the opinion varies as to whether it should be a Chrysoritis or something else. It was once found only at a place called Pella Mission near Cape Town. It was wiped out there by habitat change, by overgrazing, over frequent fires, and this butterfly relies on ants to survive. You see, this female here has laid eggs on a piece of dead bush, and there's an ant's nest under that dead bush. And the caterpillars spent all their life inside the ant's nest. And the ants feed on a very specific type of scale insect, which is only found on certain plants in certain areas, extremely rare. It was thought to be extinct for a few years until it was rediscovered by my old friend Ernest Pringle. And he very kindly invited me to the spot where I got these wonderful photographs of the butterfly. That's one of the ones we don't collect, by the way. And it's still only known from that one place at Bitsand. It hasn't been found anywhere else. Some more rarities. This is the male and the female of the Lotana giant cupid. That for many, many years was thought to be extinct. And then my friend Professor Williams, Mark Williams, who's actually a professor of veterinary pathology. He's not a professor of entomology, but we all call him Profi. And Profi went up to the grasslands at the top of Lech Alametsi and found these butterflies in numbers. And unfortunately, his daughter wasn't there to video him leaping up and down and screaming with joy. Otherwise, his reputation would have been completely destroyed. But a week later, I was up there with some of my friends, and we were taking photographs of females laying eggs on the host plant. There's a relative of the butterfly called the high-felt giant cupid, which is only found on the hills near Johannesburg. Very, very rare indeed. Very similar. The underside is very similar to the Latana giant cupid. It's clearly closely related. We're having to work really hard with local farmers, gold mine owners. A lot of them are found on gold mine territory to make sure the butterfly's future is secured. Another group of cupids, the Orochrysops, some of these are in real trouble. These are related to the Lepidocrystops. Lepidocrystops have got they've got a purely ant-associated life history. The young larvae feed on plant seeds, and then they're carried down into the ant's nest where they feed on ant brood, just like Maculineas in Europe and Asia. These ones are a bit different. They feed on Fabaceae, on the plant called Indigofera. And the larvae eat the seeds. They also, the ones we know about, when they're fully grown, they burrow into the ground and they feed on the nitrogen-containing nodules on the roots of the plant. And at the roots of the plant, you have aphids feeding on the roots, and those aphids are farmed by ants. And the ants don't live in those little burrows. They've got a nest nearby. That much we know. The Carcloof cupid, Ariadne, known from 5 sites in the KwaZulu-Natal Midlands and Nkandla in Zululand, and it's a very, very rare butterfly. Its biggest locality, Warunga Farm, has now been proclaimed a nature reserve, so we know it's safe as safe can be anyway. And the one at Nkandla has been very carefully looked after by, funnily enough, the relatives of our erstwhile President Zuma, who, when his family got to hear about it, they were very, very helpful, in fact, to preserve the locality. Brenton Cupid, which until recently was known as the Brenton Blue, Niobe, that's a different one. That was always rare, and then slowly but surely it died out in its various populations, mainly because nature conservation hadn't got a clue how to conserve it. They thought that they had to burn on a very infrequent ratio. And in fact, they tried to stop burning in the fynbos catches fire very easily, and when it burns, it burns. Professor Edge, Dr. Edge, who was actually doing research on this, he discovered that it's not burning. A lot of these butterflies require the habitat to be burnt, so the host plant will come up green and be able to be fed upon. This one relied on mega herbivore damage to the habitat. Basically, the elephants would come along, rip up the trees with the ants in, and the host plant would regenerate itself. So they had a regime where they put a backhoe into the nature reserve and dig up a few trees. And it was working. The butterfly was spreading in numbers. And then there was a catastrophic fire a few years ago on the south coast of South Africa that wiped out the entire nature reserve. The host plant came through really strong the next year, and we saw a few butterflies. So we were quite hopeful. None have been seen since. There were probably just a few survivors, a few pupae still left in the ants' nests, which emerged. The ants have gone. The trees that the ants live in were destroyed. They're coming back from the rootstock, but whether they'll survive or not, we don't know. So there's a huge effort going on right now to rediscover populations. There may be some secret little valleys along the south Cape coast where it still survives. That might seem a bit of a forlorn hope, but there's some pictures of the habitats. The top there is Warunga, where you find the Ariadne, the Carcloof cupid, and then at the bottom there's the Brenton Blue Nature Reserve. Unfortunately, I don't have a picture of it after the fire, but what you can see is the way that it was rather overgrown. There's a lot of vegetation there. These sclerophilic shrubs that you get in the fynbos are full of flammable oils. So when it catches fire in the dry season, it just burns like an Australian gum forest. And there was nothing left, just a blackened wasteland. That house behind it was burnt to the ground, and the place looks very different now, but I don't have a photograph of it. However, there is hope, because there are a couple of butterflies which we thought were extinct, and it turned out they weren't. There's one butterfly which, funnily enough, is common further north than the Asadan ciliate blue. The local subspecies, Anthene crochet, Juanitae, which was its other common name is Juanita's ciliate blue, that was thought to be extinct in South Africa. It only known from one spot where somebody had found pupae under a rock and reared them through and realized it was a new species. They thought it was a good species, so he called it after his wife, Juanita. Then somebody started doing the DNA and he realized it was a subspecies of a species from further north. But again, it was as a subspecies extinct. Then along comes the Prof again, Prof Williams. He went to Lekalametse the same weekend that he found Latana giant cupid. He found this as well, in good numbers. In fact, along one of the roads there, it turned out to be fairly common there. And I've been there since and got some nice photographs. And then the other really good one was the Waterberg Acrea copper, Ericksonia edgy. which used to be thought to be the same species as a butterfly one gets further north called Ericksonia acreina. It's a strange Lycaeniid. It's actually a mimic of one of our acreas, the dancing acrea, Acrea serena. The underside is very similar. It's thought to be extinct. Lepidopterists Society put out a big reward, a 10,000 rand reward to anybody who could find the butterfly. And we got lots of people sending in photographs of Telpenia serena. We had to say, no, sorry, no, sorry, no, sorry. We also did a GPS prediction map of a very fine, detailed one, taking into account all of the characters we knew from the one known locality where it was extinct. And the reason it went extinct is because of poor management. Purely and simply, the mega herbivores were taken out, burning was forbidden, and butterfly collectors were told they weren't allowed in there. Nobody went in there, the whole place got overgrown, the host plants got shaded out by the grass, the butterfly disappeared and it hasn't come back. Mark went to Bataleur, realized that the locality was very similar to the original one, went for a walk one morning, and there they were. And his wife did manage to see him making a fool of himself dancing afterwards. So that's at the top there is Bataleur Nature Reserve, very unprepossessing looking little spot. That patch of grassland is where you find the Waterberg Acrea copper. And that spectacular place at the bottom right is Lekalamitsi Nature Reserve with the Wolkberg Mountains in the background. And that's one of the reserve roads along the boundary. And in that bush, at the right time of the year, you can see very good numbers. You know, on a good day, you'll see a few dozen of them flying around on the flowers there. So that's one of our successes. And of course, Lekalamitsi is one of our best places for butterflying. However, now we come to the end. There are two extinct species we have where we don't know for sure. The one, which is a subspecies of a thing called the monkey blue, Lepidopterists or monkey giant cupid, we think that is extinct because the only known locality is now a quarry. And it wasn't found anywhere else when it was known. But these two, the Kaluxburg giant cupid, which has just been renamed after the place where we think it's found, very closely related to the Highfeld giant cupid and the Lotana-like giant cupid. And our GPS research to try and find similar vegetation at similar altitudes and rainfall levels indicates the area around Kaluxburg in northern KwaZulu-Natal is suitable for the butterfly. We've been back there several times. We've seen the host plant of the other two species around there many times, but we haven't yet had good weather, or it's been a drought or whatever. We just haven't managed to find it in good condition, but I'm convinced we'll find it one day there. And then the other one, the really amazing one is Mbashi River buff, which was found by Colonel Bowker in 1863, and it hasn't been seen since. And 3 specimens, that's it, no decides. And who knows, because the Mbashi River is still a very, very wild and woolly part of South Africa. It's still mostly in its original untransformed habitat. Go away! Sorry, excuse me. In its original, a lot of it's unexplored, and several of our people, including the Prof, have been down there looking for it. So far, no luck, but you never know. So it keeps us going. Anyway, with that, and I haven't been timing myself, so I don't know how long I've gone on air for, but that's it. Thank you very much for watching and listening. I hope you're all still here. Let's exit the presentation, and then I'm gonna.
So this is Sharon. I would say I thoroughly love this session of yours. Everything was new to me, and of course, I hope for others too from India. You literally walked us through every corners of South Africa and literally told us A to Z of all the aspects of South African butterflies, and it was a wonderful insight. A lot of them I never knew it actually existed. So many pretty ones, and it's just tempting for me to visit South Africa someday. And regarding the scoring system, recognition hierarchy, that was so new to me, and we can also practice the same in India too. And the main reason why I took up this series of webinars on Know Your Neighboring Country Butterflies is we really got to know about neighboring country butterflies. We should never be inside a nutshell, knowing just about Indian butterflies or maybe butterflies of any specific region to a country or so. So I just wanted to give an exposure, and I'm really happy that I came across you over Facebook and Instagram, and we got connected. You're really an inspiration. And I want to tell one more thing. It's surprising to see that there are no butterflies from Rheodinidae family from South Africa. Is that true?
No, we don't get Rheodinidae in South Africa. We get them in Zimbabwe. They're very, very scarce in Africa. There's only one genus, Abysara.
Okay.
And you do get quite a few of them in Central Africa. I've seen them. I blush to say I've never photographed one. In my collecting days, I collected a few. But yeah, in fact, Abysara rogersi, I think it might. I'm not even sure it's found in Zimbabwe. I think it's a Zambian butterfly. They don't come out of the tropics. I do know that.
Okay.
Which is a pity.
Okay. So viewers, if you have any question for Steve, please send in chat channel. We'll be happy to answer them. One sec. So the first question is by Harsha Kumar. He's asking, do the Charaxinae butterflies as adults specialize in secondary metabolites of rotting organic matter and tree sap?
Very definitely. In fact, very few of them feed on nectar. Brutus, one of the ones I showed you, is known to drink nectar, but it's mainly from plants whose nectar is properly fermenting. So it's always things like rotting tree sap, fruit, dung, dead animals. They've got some rather disgusting habits.
Okay. There are a few greetings from you from Sri Lanka, and also Samilan Shetty from India. He's saying, hope to see you in Western Ghats of India soon.
Yeah, I hope so. I was hoping to go there until this bloody virus came and hit us. I have to hope that A, I don't catch it, and B, that it doesn't hurt my finances too badly, so I can afford to get over there.
Please do visit southern India and also Western Ghats anytime soon. We'll be happy to host you there.
I'd love to come. And the same thing goes to everybody who attended the talk. I mean, when things do get back to normal, come and visit us in South Africa. We've got a little bit of butterfly tourism going on here. I've been doing a couple of small trips, most of which have been ruined by circumstance. We've had the first time the British government put a travel advisory on South Africa, so people cancelled, and of course now we've got COVID. So, but in 2 years' time, when I retire, I'm hoping to do this full time. I see there's a couple of other questions there. National butterflies of the African continent.
Yeah.
We don't have an African national butterfly, and in fact, I'm not sure if any country has got a national butterfly. South Africa doesn't. We've been trying to get the Table Mountain Beauty declared our national butterfly, but I don't know. I think the government's got other priorities right now. But when we do, butterfly with that one.
Yeah, sir, you never told about your book, second edition.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, hang on a second. Can you all see me?
Yeah, we can see you.
There it is.
So that's the second edition to the Butterflies of South Africa. So people who want to purchase that, please feel free to contact Steve on Instagram or Facebook.
It's easier if you're not in South Africa. It's easier if you do it through Amazon, or because this is the African edition. Outside South Africa, you've got the Bloomsbury edition, which looks a little bit different. And I must be honest, when Straight told me that Bloomsbury were publishing it overseas, when they're the biggest publisher in the world, and they're the ones who publish Harry Potter and Shakespeare and everything else. So that really was an accolade. I was really pleased about that. But there it is. There's some life histories in there. There's our friend the Waterberg Acreocopper. So you see it at the bottom there. So yeah, that's the book. And also in times like this, of course, we've got the app, which is, let me see if we can show you this, because the app is available off the App Store. And hang on, let me just find it. And that's what it looks like.
We're not able to see.
Not able to see. Okay, yeah. All right. Yeah. Anyway, that's also available off the. If you just do a search on Woodhall on the Google Store, you'll find it. Yeah. So that is busy being updated right now. A new version is going to come out next year.
Yeah. So you have got another question. It's from Narmada from Sri Lanka. So she's asking, sir, how many endemics, including subspecies, in South Africa?
There were 806, but I believe there's now one new species in gestation, which will make it 807.
Yeah. Someone is asking what is the app called. Can you type in the chat channel so that everyone can get access to it and also have a view. And for viewers, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the chat channel, or if you want to ask him personally, please feel free to contact him in Instagram or Facebook. We'll be happy to answer you all.
Endemics, actually, it's quite interesting. I know it's something around 50%. I just need to check up on my database on that. We have a lot of endemic butterflies here, purely because we got two sets of butterflies. Everything in the north of the country is very similar to what's found further north in Africa. Everything in the central and southern half is mainly endemic. And you get one or two species like Papilio demodocus and the Belinosa rosa that are found, and Veneta cardui, which are found everywhere. So yeah, we've got a lot of endemics here.
Yeah. And any more questions? Okay. I don't think we have any more questions.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of them were answered during the presentation. Yeah.
A lot of them enjoyed your session, sir. Though I asked just a beginner session, you just elaborated from A to Z of all the South African butterflies and also all the works you've been doing, and it's just a lot.
Well, it's a huge amount.
Yeah.
Hang on, there's another question here. Has anybody, Icenidae present a wide and interesting range of lifestyles and so on. Has anybody studied the evolution of these behaviors in the phylogenetic context? Right now, there's a lot of phylogenetic research going on Chryseritis and Aleodes, two of the genera of Icenidae. There was some work done many years ago by a chap called Dr. Cottrell, and they haven't included behaviors largely because they tend to be consistent across a genus, but the Chryseritis, they aren't. Chryseritis vary all the way from pure plant eating with ant association. They like to have ants nearby and they're not harmed by the ants, right through to actually being fed by the ants. So that is something that the new work that's happening on the Chryseritis, it's actually sort of cutting edge science right now.
And I was also happy to see pictures from your slides, like dark webbed ringlet and also mother of pearl. Someone called Ping Chung Lee, he had posted in Facebook from Timbe Elephant Park. It's surprising to see there are, it was so happy to see them, at least one or two known butterflies through Facebook, which I learned.
I'll tell you what, Dr. Lee from Hong Kong and Gigi Lai and the husband and a couple of friends, Eric Lee, came over here about, how many years ago now? Probably about 7 years ago. And before I was able to get time off work to go doing butterfly tourism. And 2014, there we go.
Yeah.
So 6 years ago. They did Zululand, and we were able to meet up with them at the weekend. And Zululand is one of those places where you can visit that place every year for 20 years and not see the rarities. They're just so rare. They nailed just about every single one in 1 2-week trip. I was just absolutely amazed. I mean, talk about luck. they must have been very, what's the word? Very. They must have had good karma. Yeah, it was a good trip.
And any more questions from the participants? If you don't like commenting here, please feel free to contact Steve in Facebook or Instagram. He'll be happy to answer. And also, please get his book. I'm sure that's going to be it's going to be interesting to read this book. And before we end this session, thank you so much, sir. Thank you for accepting this and being a part of this event on Know Your Neighboring Country Butterflies.
Oh, hang on. Here's another one, right? Harsha Kumar about cupids, so many being rare or endangered. One thing I can tell you is we've got lots of cupids here. I mean, I think the Lepidopterists themselves are, how many species are? Let me just check. Probably go. There must be. Here we go. In Africa, there's 136 species of giant cupid, and in our area, there's 50 species. And of those 50 species, probably only, I don't know. Oh, and the other ones as well. There's 16 if you include all the cupids. There's probably only about half a dozen that are really, really rare. A lot of them are species that are only found on one mountain, and that mountain will be the nature reserve, so it's pretty safe. There's also a lot of taxonomic uncertainty with one or two species where my friend at Harvard University, Naomi Pierce, once said one of the problems in South Africa is that she's pretty sure there are more names than there are butterflies.
Yeah.
So there needs to be some taxonomic revisions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we are done. Yeah. People who have any questions, they will always ask you in Facebook or they'll contact you on Instagram.
We're sure we'll talk a lot over the next few days. In fact, it's now 10 o'clock. It's good timing. I need to go and do something now. That was great. Thanks very much.
Yeah, it was great. And thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for, accepting the first time I asked you. And I really enjoyed it. And I also learned a lot on South African butterflies. I wish someday I visit South Africa and also get to meet you. And also, please visit South India and also Western Ghats. We'll be more happy in hosting you. I'm looking forward to your visit to India. Yeah.
My company's active in India, so I might have to come down business one day. Old thumbs. Okay. All right.
Sure, sir. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.